I'm Honappa. I work at ARM. I have been contributing to DPDK from this past year. We currently are around 10 people working on DPDK in Austin and Shanghai. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Hemant. I am a software architect with NXP. I have been involved with the DPD community from last more than 2 years, and we have been trying to put more and more hardware accelerator support into DPDK.
I'm Stephen Heminger. I think I've been doing DPK for 5 years now.
I'm Jeremy. I've just mostly been working on the CI work. I have not actually done real DPDK work. The previous person that worked on this community lab did their PhD on the DPDK, so yeah.
And I'm Bruce Richardson. I'm from Intel, and I've been, working on DPDK for quite a long time now.
My name is Faru. I am from Intel as well, and I am software engineer, technical board member.
So this is a Q&A session. So if you have questions, you can ask. I just want to start saying something, just to make things clear. Currently, DPDK is best supported on Linux, so mainly the community is focused on Linux, but not only. There is also FreeBSD, Windows is coming. And about CPU, it is best supported on Intel and ARM currently. And thanks to all the work being done by ARM currently to get a very good support. And that's all. So that's just a thing to keep in mind. DPDK is for Linux, Intel, and ARM. But we can extend to anything. This is the message. Okay, if you already have question, okay, John.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So currently our working model is Linux working model of submitting patches. We have Patchwork, which is quite good. You can hear me? Yeah? Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
okay, all
better.
right, sorry. Okay. So our current working model within DPDK is a kind of patch-based system similar to the Linux kernel working model, right? And that's what we use. And that's what we started with, and it's been successful to date. But is it a time now to look, now that the community has got much larger, to look at maybe other working models, such as incorporating something like GitHub or Gerrit? I know we've looked at this in the past, but maybe it's time to ask the question again in terms of what does the panel think?
Okay, who wants to reply? Okay. All the feedback, there were a lot of discussion about what should be the workflow for DPDK. And there are some requests to use more modern tools or different tools. But a lot of feedbacks are, we just want to use the same tool as the Linux community and other low-level projects. So this is working based on email. And there are also a lot of feedback saying that, after all, email is a way to get everything involved in the same forum. And sometimes, I know it can be very hard to manage his email. You have to configure your email client and so on. But I think it is the only default of this system. If we use other tools, we will find a lot of other defects. So it's really an ended debate.
So I want to answer the question by asking a question back to Thomas. Have we gotten big enough now that it's time to split up? Has dev@dpdk.org become the LKML of the DPDK? Do we need to have the sub-maintainers having their own mailing lists? Well, for example, could there be an Intel NIC DPDK mailing list and a ARM subsystem mailing list, because not everybody is going to be wanting to get 500 email messages a day. that the people, that maybe we'd get more review if we actually, now that we've split into subsystems, maybe we need to have multiple mailing lists.
Yes. One way to fix the email workflow is to split it in smaller parts. This is what we already tried to do by having several mailing lists. There is one mailing list for main development, one to discuss about backports, one for testing, one for the website, and so on. Should we split more? This is a question. Yeah. And we can split a lot, actually. But at which point it will become a good split, or it will be too much restrictive? And yeah, another way to see how to work with emails is just to add more tools. So now we have Patchwork. With Patchwork, we have a good summary of how many patches we have on the mailing list, which are pending. Oh, I just remember there is a user mailing list for user question. And we can add maybe more tools to be aware of what is hot on the mailing list. I know there are more tools in other communities. Maybe it's an answer.
Just want to add one thing about the question, the earlier question about the GitHub. DPDK is already on the GitHub. Like, it's the main repository is getting synced frequently, and you can host your own tree.
That's just a mirror. So we are not using GitHub process, but mirroring it into GitHub.
Yeah, see, the main difference in the GitHub process is the Garrett kind of thing, right?
A pull request method, yeah.
Yeah, pull request. And we did a lot of discussion in the last few years, and we found there are issues like in tracking. So the current model fits better for us, right? Because pull request, like previous pull request, who is going to close and all those things, we found there are issues with the way.
I mean, in my experience, it works okay. I've worked both ways. And the kernel community is switching. They're saying that some subsystems that have a preference are going to switch to that, but that'll be by subsystem. Like if some maintainer feels that that's the way he wants to go to, or she wants to do it. So what I meant in the DPDK context, that means if you had a new driver architecture and you were working internally and you wanted to work in GitHub, you're free to do that and then just send the results to the mailing list.
Actually, we did try it in the compression library, setting up with a GitHub and try to do it, but somehow it did not work out that well.
Yeah, I think with all the tooling and process that, you know, making massive changes maybe aren't necessary to fix whatever issues we see, because I think we also need to have, rather than a tooling-centric approach, we need to actually focus on, well, what are the real problems we actually want to solve? You know, if we want to look at something like GitHub or want to move some or all of the process to using this, what are the benefits we're expecting to see rather than just moving for the sake of moving? I think we need to take a closer look and say, okay, what's working well right now? What's not working well? You know, are we not getting enough reviews done in time? Well, is putting it up on GitHub going to help get more reviews sooner or not? So I think we need to really focus on the problems that we're seeing, where are things going well or where are things going badly, where are things going more slowly, because I think we'd all like to see accelerated development in DPDK over time. So that'd be my views on it.
As one of the maintainers, I'm also spending too much time in mailing list, and I'm reading most of those password mails. I agree now it takes a lot of time, and it keeps increasing and keeps taking more and more time. But for splitting mailing lists, we have already different subsystems defined, and patch have them. It should be easy to filter them. So for the people having problem to read them or getting too many people, it's so easy to have a filter and don't get any, for example, networking drivers, but just AEL ones. The problem of splitting is right now every kind of discussion is open for everyone. Even though I am not, for example, maintainer or interested in some part, I can see and comment on make it better the other part, or we can learn from each other. So in that point, I believe is going to have same medium. We can have Gerrit, but then there will be limited set of maintainers will be checking that code piece. So that discussion and learning won't spread out. But I agree with Bruce. If this is become something preventing us has less reviews, for example, let's change something. I just have a feeling that having less review is not because we are using mailing list, but if it will improve the process, let's do it, but let's just measure it, try to measure it first. What was the effect of using mailing list and these tools?
One more comment. When we have a pull request system, we must ask some people to review this pull request. With email, we just have to make them CC of the patch. And about that, maybe you don't know, but we have a file called maintainers where we can find all the maintainers for every part of DPDK, so you know who to ask a question or who to ask a review. So maybe we can just show, I don't know. Please, can you show the maintainers file? Yeah. So everybody can see it. Yeah. You see, yeah. If you scroll down, that you will see that there is a lot of part with emails of people. So you can just find them here and add them to your thread. Okay, another question? Okay, so this, you can see on the screen, this is the website. It is a page for the technical board meetings. We are listing every report or every minute of each meetings. So again, the minutes are sent on the mailing list, but if you don't find them, you can find a clean list here on the web page. And you will see what we discuss in such board. Here we have 5 members of the technical board. Hemant, Stefan, Bruce, Ferru, and myself. We are a total of 9 people. And it keeps changing. People can enter in the technical board or leave.
Also, technical board meetings done on IRC, and that IRC channel is not locked, so it is public. Discussion part is public, voting part is not public, but yeah.
Other questions about community workflow?
Okay, we've just started really upping the ante on the stable releases and doing more stable releases in backports. Is this something that the community's actually bought into doing it, or is it something that we're doing it for ourselves? How many people would use a stable release?
Can we see the hands, perhaps, who is using stable?
The long term.
Or LTS?
LTS release.
LTS is better, perhaps. Yeah.
We can ask who is using stable release, but if only Red Hat and Ubuntu raise their hand, it means everybody will use them.
Yes.
Yeah, question?
Yeah, on testing front, like, is there any thought to getting more self-tests, or like trying to maybe not enforce that people submit unit tests with their code, but, you know, getting sort of more like a functional level testing?
Yeah. Actually, this is not a question which is a lot discussed in the technical board meetings currently, but we should start to take more care. Yeah, Bruce?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely something that we should look to encourage. Whether or not we enforce it is a different matter. But we also need to do some cleanup on the tests that we already have. And I know there are already patches gone up to try and, shall we say, reduce the running time of some of the tests and do a little bit of cleanup. But yeah, having more and better automated testing would be something that would be really nice to have. it's the automated testing has mostly been focused on the individual libraries because they're easier to test. Unlike the drivers, they don't tend to need specialized hardware. So if we could find more ways we could test more of the subsystems, perhaps more of the driver subsystems automatically without having to have hardware requirements and get additional test coverage, that would be really great because, as most of us engineers know, things go wrong and regressions creep in, so the more automated regression testing we have, the better. It's something we should strongly encourage. I'm not sure if we should go so far as absolutely mandating it in all circumstances, but I think strongly encourage would be my approach to this. If somebody's submitting a new library, particular to DPDK, I would expect some sort of test suite to go along with that. However, my suspicion would be that the test suites probably aren't going to get as well reviewed as the library code itself. Maybe that's something we also need to look into too, that whenever we're reviewing the code, we should also review and see just how well tested it is.
Jeremy, is it planned to run some unit tests soon in the community lab?
I mean, we could definitely look into it. I mean, if that's something that, if that maintainers would like, we could definitely add some type of unit testing support.
Yeah.
So in one of the open source communities that I used to work before, we had any patch that would come in, it had to go through a set of tests, and only if those passed, it will get into the community. I think that's something we should look at, is what I think.
Agree. We should have more unit tests, and we are missing some. So we are not very good there. I agree. I think we are not in a phase to enforce people, but we should start somewhere. It can be what Bruce suggests, highly encourage, but we should have more of them.
And I also think that our testing infrastructure in terms of the DPDK itself is possibly in need of some work where, as I said, there's some ongoing about test times. There's also, as part of the switch, to look to use Meson as well. There's support in there for running the tests through Meson itself, the individual tests, but perhaps we should look at more or different test frameworks or testing infrastructure to help with these automated tests rather than a custom written binary. Or how do we make sure that whenever auto tests are added for a new library, how do we make sure it's not forgotten to add those to, let's say, the test list, be it the Python script as it was, or the meson.build file that lists out the tests now? Or do we need to look at some of these unit testing frameworks or something else in that line to improve testing? Suggestions welcome. Because that auto test infrastructure has been around since the earliest days of DPDK. Is there something better out there? Possibly.
Hey, this is Qian from Intel, and my team is also responsible for the testing for the community. And as you mentioned, that testing is important, and currently we see the CI for the DPDK in the community, the pre-merge. When you submit patches, currently we have the build and the performance testing, but there is a challenge that you have different, subtrees, maybe 8 or I remember 8 subtrees. So it will be very difficult to do the functional and the performance testing since you don't know your patch goes to which branch, which subtree. And we just mentioned about Gerrit. I think Gerrit could be some possible way to solve that problem, since Gerrit has different subtrees, and I know many projects, Android, Google Android is using that to manage the whole Android system. So this is one thing we can consider to use Gerrit for the code review and the code management. So how do you think? Yeah, Thomas and...
I'm a bit surprised that Gerrit is helping for that. Can we do the same thing without Gerrit?
You mean for the patchwork or?
Yeah. Yeah, you mean we just need to run the same test on every trees?
Not that. Things, you don't know the patch goes to which subtree, and each subtree has the dependency with a master. Things currently it goes to the subtree and then go to the master. So even it can pass on the subtree, maybe it's merged back to the master. It can also not resolve the problem.
Yeah, that's kind of like a problem we face is we end up applying all patches to master, and that can be a problem where it doesn't apply properly because the patch was meant for a different subtree. So there are like a few patches in our like overview that have apply errors or build errors because of that problem. So yeah, that's something we'd like to solve at some point.
You mean the tag for the
prefix?
So it's kind of force people to make a tag for their patches, but currently
In the subject prefix to say what?
prefix. Yeah, but it's kind of you need force everyone to follow. If someone does not follow, then it's not work. It cannot work. Yeah.
A prefix can work, but it is pushing this complexity to developers, users. Some of them already complaining about process has many steps, so that will be another step. I would prefer to solve more internally manner.
I mean, for just needing to pick out which subtree to apply a patch to, I would suspect a naive solution would be to try and applying it to all of them and see which one it applies to, because applying a patch to a tree is a fairly rapid operation. If it applies without conflicts, it's a pretty good candidate that'll thereafter compile and all. So compiling would probably take the time. The other thing that could perhaps help solve it is maybe if we did look at splitting to different mailing lists, then obviously which mailing list it was sent on to would tell you what tree it applies to. However, I suspect the even bigger problem, though, is the dependent patches, where you've got one patch set that depends upon another patch set. You can't just solve that by trying to see, does it apply to main tree? Okay, well, no, then try applying it to next net and the next event. If it depends upon another patch set, then there's no real heuristic you can use that'll trivially tell you what dependent patch it is. So that's where I think the even bigger problem is beyond just determining what tree it's targeting.
I think in the patches have like netvert.io or whatever already in the patches. So, I mean, that's already there. That could be used.
There'll probably be a lot of heuristics you can use to get it right 99% of the time. And so the question is, where are the cases where the tree detection will fail, and how often is that a problem compared to having chain patch sets, which I think is probably far more common than issues where we'd have heuristics failures.
Probably people, probably if you put it in as a patch, you means you want it to be applied. So it should be in a position where it can be applied. I'd say maybe it should be an RFC if it can't be applied because there's some dependencies of other patches maybe.
So as a maintainer, we are parsing that information. So that information is there. As you said, we are not, when I get a patch, I am not trying to apply on each tree. I can figure it out. So that can be automated, but as Bruce said, there will be false positives. So it reduces at least.
Yeah, and as for the dependent patches, I'm not sure we can have it that all patches should always apply to the particular tree, because sometimes it's just you have an ordering of patches. Two people are working on the same library at the same time, and they need to sort out amongst themselves as to whose patches are going to go first, and the other person base their patches upon that. And whenever the V1 patch gets sent out, or V2 or VN, whatever it happens to be, there is always then a lead time before they get applied. We know from past experience that a lot of patches get applied in the week leading up to RC1. So you don't want to have to wait for somebody who's got a follow-on patch. They don't want to have to wait until that first patch is applied before they can send theirs. So I don't think we can get away from the problem of having one patch set designed to be applied on top of another. But that may be one case where having a standardized tag to indicate this depends on this particular patch set may be appropriate. I can't think of any other easy way to solve that other than having that information in a standard format if you want it automated. So.
Yep. So, talking about tooling, I would like to say that we must be very cautious when trying to fix problems with tooling, because sometimes we are just introducing new problems, and we don't want to have a ridiculous amount of tools and make work more difficult. Like, for instance, we are talking about the mailing list, and we say maybe we should split the mailing list, it will be easier. Okay, so after we'll have to ask in which mailing list should I send this patch which is related to several topics, or where should I ask my question? Okay, new issue. It was the same thing for the Git tree. At the start, we have only one Git tree, and we decided to split it with subtrees in order to make our work easier. And now we have new issues with the subtrees. So you see, it's the same thing if we want to switch to a new tool like Gerrit or GitHub, I don't know. Okay, maybe it fixes this and this, but then we will have new issue. Like, for instance, sometimes GitHub is offline. How many people in this room will leave the project if we start using Gerrit? It's another question. You see? No one leave. Okay. You won't leave the project. Other question?
Another. Oh, sorry. Another observation is that about the patch merge frequency. I'm not sure currently what's the status. The subtree merge to the master.
The agreement is to try to merge subtree every weeks. It doesn't really happen every weeks because there is some weak weeks, like this week. There is no patch, so there is nothing to merge. It really depends, but yes, we will try to do more merge more frequently. It helps.
Okay, yeah. Thanks from the from current observation that for the 18.11, we still see many patches merge very late, and we see RC1 may have very critical issues. Things, So I think we can still improve.
True. True. So it helps to do more frequent merge, but it helps even more to not introduce bugs.
Okay.
Yes, question.
Hey folks, so question, or rather a bit of a comment. We currently have two build systems, so we have Make and Meson. As a developer, I'm a big proponent of the Meson build system. I find it's much more fast at building and useful for my needs. But where do we go from here as a community? How many people in the room, for example, rely on the Make system every day to build their version of DPDK? Are you aware that the Meson system exists, and have you tried it? Does it not work for your usage? Where as a community do we go?
Okay, I can ask the question differently. Who doesn't like Meson and Ninja? Okay, so we are good. We can switch to Meson.
And also, I'd like to flag with that the use of package config, and try to, as one of the objectives I had when starting the first work on Meson, and thanks to all the others who have helped out with this, Luca in particular, who's unfortunately not here, did a great amount of work on it too, but one of the objectives was to try and have a standard package config file for DPDK that the end user, the app developer, could just use the package config info for DPDK rather than having to try and extract from our make files the list of libraries that all need to be linked against to try and make it as easy as possible. I'm not sure whether we've achieved that yet. I think there probably is more work still to be done in getting a really good package config file out there. But if people have ideas or suggestions on how to improve that, I'd be very interested to hear them. Or if people have feedback or tried using the package config file for DPDK, how did you find it? So that's just my ask to the community in general on that build system area.
I was expecting more people using Meson, but there was a roadmap decided, right, in TechPort, as far as I remember. If I'm wrong, please correct, but we will switch Meson completely before 1911 LTS. That's what I remember, at least.
Yes. First of all, Bruce is the owner for the migration to Meson. Yeah, you are. You look surprised.
I shouldn't be.
So the agreement in the technical board indeed is to be working with Maison completely for the next LTS, which is 1911. To get this achievement, we need to have Maison features complete in the middle of the year for 1905.
I mean, it's nearly there. If people are aware of things that haven't been ported over yet, please flag them, and especially if you can offer to help. I realize there are a few things still left out there. I've got half-done patches for a couple of them myself, but there's not a lot out there, I think, left to be ported over yet.
So we will drop the build system with Makefiles.
So that's not to say, again, with the reason to use package config is that the application, your end application, shouldn't need to change. If you look in the examples makefiles, or the makefiles for any of the examples like Hello World, you'll see that there's put in there support to build your Hello World example using make while using the package config file generated by Maison. So this is, if you're a consumer of DPDK inside your application, and can use a package config file, the fact that we're switching from make to Maison should have no impact on the end application user at all. I mean, that's one of our objectives here. It should be purely internal. Obviously, if you're working on DPDK and submitting patches to DPDK, yeah, it means you now have to build using Ninja and Maison.
Yeah. So when we will have switched to Maison, I think we cannot say that we are all guy keeping all tools. Because Maison is so new that Bruce is still fixing some bugs in Maison. Thank you, Bruce.
I think our time is about gone.
Yeah, maybe the last question.
Very generic question. I want to know, I am an application developer on top of the DPDK, and I would like to know which direction DPDK goes to, for example, next year. Because I'm not developing DPDK itself, so I want to know the direction of the DPDK.
No. Good question. Thank you.
I am not aware of any long-term plans, and we are not working on them. But hardware enablement, I can say. We are having more and more hardware enablement from different vendors. So that's what I would expect, that we will support more hardware.
Yeah, hardware enablement, it means also continue adding more API, more offloads. And probably the main goal is to improve usability. So Maison is part of this work. We want DPDK to be better integrated in application, and not DPDK-specific application, every applications. Maybe P4, we talked about it today, maybe P4 is part of the usability goal, and there are some other topics.
Yeah, the other thing to keep an eye on is that there is a roadmap page on the website, right, where it's not kept the most up-to-date, unfortunately, and it's not also the most forward-looking, but it's another place where you can find out information about what people might be looking at working on. And would also, again, use this to encourage people, if you are, planning on upstreaming a feature to DPDK or new hardware support or to DPDK or anything like that, please, send out a mail in advance or a patch to the website to add it to the roadmap, so that everybody else looking at the website knows that this is coming and can see any opportunities for collaboration on it, because that page is there for that reason.
Yes, and don't be afraid to propose your preferred feature, because if it's helpful for you, probably it's helpful for others, and we prefer to have all the useful code at the same place. That's why we are accepting new libraries again and again. The next library will be the IPsec library. This is a totally new stuff for DPDK, and we discussed it in the technical board. We discussed that it's really useful to get it packaged with all the DPDK. So the scope is not closed. If it's very, very short.
my impression about DPDK is that everyone is trying to optimize for the throughput, right? But there is also another category for very interesting application, which is for ultra-low latency. So is there any interest that we're going to optimize for that direction as well?
So could you repeat virtual?
To achieve absolute low latency.
Low latency.
Yeah, not instead of throughput, right? We've been optimized everything for throughput. But there's another category, which is ultra-low latency.
Poll mode is all about latency. You wouldn't do poll mode if you're after throughput. You'd be doing delayed and batching and more batching. We're all about, that's the whole reason everything's poll mode is low latency. And that's also what gives you the deterministic packet time.
So yes, I do hear this question about latency using DPDK from my customers. They kind of not very happy about doing batch mode of processing. They would like to process one packet at a time to address their latency concerns. But I think at this point, DPDK allows, if you want to process one packet at a time, it allows for that. But yeah, I do see a few things here and there. We'll try and fix those from ARM platform perspective. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So thank you.
So let's a quick round of applause for the tech board members coming up here.